Sorry, Basketball Live, a huge win for the Toronto Raptors. Probably my favorite game of the season from wire to wire. I thought there was a lot of positive things for the Raptors tonight, starting with the play of Pascal Siakam, really setting the tone of being really bought into the offense. I think couldn't have picked a better time than today to talk about potentially Pascal Siakam. What would it look like if he bought into the offense eventually? I certainly wasn't expecting it to happen tonight, but he bought in completely. The times where he was aggressive, he was supposed to be aggressive. I think he played a pretty complete game around. And I mean, honestly, there was a lot of good things that happened because of that. Obviously, I think everyone else sort of settled into their roles. You saw Jakob have a really good game. You saw O.G Anunoby probably have one of his better games of the season. And of course, Scottie Barnes just cheerleading, quarterbacking, leading the defense, leading the charge, being a leader out there. I think he played a great game too. So we will take some calls. This is a call-in show. I apologize for starting a little bit late. I'm going through massive internet connectivity issues. I guess when you're this critical of Bell and Rogers, they do own the power to shut off the power on you. I'm kidding. Okay. There will be no intro today. Let's just get right into it. I apologize again for the bit of a delay. So again, the Raptors come out. They face a healthy Chicago Bulls that have been sort of in and out with and without Zach LaVine. I think the defense was okay. Just to be completely fair, I think the defense was okay. There was a lot of mistakes down the stretch, especially there were a lot of mistakes. I'm going to wind a little bit positive today because I'm just so encouraged that this team played within the offense, right? Now, you've heard me all year, right? There's really been two types of games so far this year. There's been a type of game where I think that Pascal Siakam has kind of been out of the offense, which means that he's just not destroying anything, not disrupting anything, but he's not really participating in a way that I would like him to. As in, I'm not really loving his cuts. I'm not really loving his screens. I'm not really loving his intensity on offense. There is a way to be aggressive without being ball dominant. And I think he sort of threaded the needle perfectly tonight, where he was attacking and then they would send a second defender and it was immediate. There wasn't too much thinking about it. It was just immediate. The ball was going out. Unfortunately for the Raptors, too often it was going out to Dennis Schroeder. Now, the other side of it. There's been the other side of it where, Pascal Siakam sort of just like hunts for his own, dominates possessions too much, allows the defense to load up. And that didn't happen tonight either. This game reminded me a little bit of the Milwaukee game that he got. But the Milwaukee game, he was like shooting really well from three. And tonight it wasn't really about that. So let's take a look at the Chicago Bulls side of it. DeMar DeRozan, really frustrating night for DeMar DeRozan, man. A lot of missed free throws, 4 missed free throws. Feels like the karma gods really got him back for that DeMar DeRozan play-in fiasco last year. But ultimately, he just had a really frustrating game, man. And you felt it. Like that -31 is not lying to you. He played a really bad game all around. And 7 for 16, frustrating. Got a technical foul, then got a second technical foul as Scottie Barnes danced. And that was fun. Great. Ultimately, Zach LaVine, he did whatever he wanted, didn't he? 36 points. If he's auditioning for, hey, Toronto, trade for me, good audition, really good audition. Patrick Williams moving to the bench. I think he played reasonably well. For the Raptors side of it, it's an even attack, right? Even shot distribution. I think, again, Pascal Siakam, I think he finished the first half with 2 points, right? He found a lot of his stretch late. He took 6 threes. This is a guy who's really struggling from three. And those 6 threes were all within the offense. And I don't have a problem with any of them. 1 for 6 from three means that if he shot 6 for 12, you do the math on how well he shot inside the arc. He shot well. And he attacked the defense when they were closing out kind of out of control or in transition. I think he played a really good game, as I said. O.G Anunoby, everything created for him pretty much, right? Not a lot of self-creation, not a lot of, stuff needed. He had a really nice pass to Jakob out of the pick and roll. I really like that. Again, Jakob, really efficient night. And oh my God, I love to see one turnover there. That was brilliant. One turnover for Jakob Couple of almost turnovers, but he made it work. Dennis Schroeder, 6 for 16, 1 for 9 from three. Oh my God. But you know what? I've been complaining a lot about Dennis Schroeder, and I got to say, despite the numbers and despite how horrific this looks, I didn't hate the shots he took tonight. I didn't hate his time on the ball tonight. It was a lot quicker. And I think that he initiated the offense a lot quicker and he allowed the offense to sort of breathe around him. And I think that this was one of the better Dennis Schroeder games. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to look at 1 for 9 and assume that he had a really bad game. And maybe you're expecting me to come on here and say that he had a bad game. I don't think he did. Chris Boucher, quick hook, 10 minutes. I think the Raptors really need to explore the concept of Otto Porter being a permanent fixture in this lineup. I cannot ignore the fact that one of your 5 to 6 best players is consistently getting DNP-CDs when he's apparently healthy. That's weird to me. Precious Achiuwa, really good, and like a couple of really bad plays. I don't know. Like that's the thing with Precious Achiuwa, right? Like it's really, really good. You see the flashes. I mean, people saying like, oh my God, he doesn't deserve to be. I mean, yes, he does deserve to be part of the rotation. He's a really good young player. And, you know, you saw some really good stuff from him tonight. Gary Trent Jr., he did his work in 21 minutes, 16 points. I think it started out a lot better than it ended, right? I think the end was kind of like, I don't know. I didn't love it. Gradey Dick, you know what? Again, you're going to look at 2 points and you're going to say he had a bad game. But you know what? I am used to lineups with Gradey Dick, especially that lineup with Scottie Barnes and the 4 bench players. I'm like, oh, this one's going to leak. This lineup might leak oil. Because initially we saw one unit with Scotty and Pascal in the bench, right? So it was like, this has been a consistent theme with the Raptors over the last couple of games where Darko Rajakovic kind of adjusting to, hey, Scotty plus the bench unit kind of bled minutes for us. So we're going to try to see what Scotty plus one starter and the bench looks like. And it looked really good. And last game, it was OG, Scotty plus the bench. And tonight, it was Scotty, Pascal plus the bench. It's interesting. They're trying some things out. I like it. I think it looked good. But that Scotty plus bench unit, I was like, oh, this could be bad. They didn't look that bad, right? Gradey was still outmatched. I think Zach LaVine kind of got his own a little bit, a couple times against him. But overall, I think when the Raptors look back on most of the games this year, they're going to see about 55 to 65 mistakes, maybe more. Some games, maybe 150 mistakes. I think tonight, when they look back, they're probably going to see about 25 to 30 times where either they didn't attack when they should have, or they attacked before they should have, or there was like a really flagrant missed, coverage or rotation. But for the most part, I think apart from that fourth quarter, where the Raptors made it a little too interesting for my liking, I think this team played about 97% basketball. When I say 97% basketball, I'm talking 97% execution. I'm not talking Dennis Schroeder missing threes, Pascal Siakam missing threes. I mean, you had a lot of players shoot really poorly tonight, and you won this game wire to wire. I mean, take a look, right? I mean, this was a professional effort through and through. In terms of the team stats, I mean, you barely win the possession battle. You allowed them to shoot 51% from the field and 44% from three. They shoot 63% from the line, so a bit of a self-inflicted wound right there. But you out-rebound them 13-9. I mean, that makes a little bit of a difference. You kind of keep your turnovers down, and I mean, this is one of the better teams in the league at forcing turnovers, so I think that was good. And you get a few more points off of those turnovers. You just win on the margins, really. They foul a little bit more. They pick up 2 more technical fouls. And I mean, ultimately, this game probably was a little bit closer in the end than it should have been. But overall, professional win. And offensively, I give this team like a solid A- tonight. Again, Dennis Schroeder probably not going to shoot 1 for 9 too often. And maybe, Pascal Siakam's not going to shoot 1 for 6 too often from 3. But I think overall, like to the people saying like, why is Dennis Schroeder, why are Pascal Siakam taking these threes? Well, ultimately it's because the defense, that's what they're giving up. They're giving up those threes. And if you don't take them, the whole offense breaks down. So you kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I think honestly, Scottie Barnes, 5 offensive rebounds is really underrated tonight. He had 2 blocks. I felt like he had 3, but let's call it 2, whatever. His defense, his pickup point in the fourth quarter was freaking inspiring, man. Like he has often struggled in those situations, but like whether it be Zach LaVine, whether it be DeMar DeRozan, he he was disruptive. He bothered them tonight. He really screwed up their rhythm. And sometimes just offering that little bit of like stunt defense at the half court, like just kind of like disrupting the rhythm of the offensive player, trying to bring it up, making their pass, making the entry pass just a little bit harder. That level of activity, not only is it very infectious for your team, because it's really hard to not compete on defense when one of your teammates is competing that hard. There's just sort of a herd mentality when it comes to defense and shot selection, if you will. And you notice that with this team a lot, right? So there was a couple of plays where Gary came down and kind of like did a heat check. And then the very next play, Pascal does it. And the very next play, Pascal. And it's just like, oh my God. This happens with this team sometimes, right? But again, you have to set the tone early. Pascal set the tone early for this offense. I think, just by making quick passes, quick reads. Sometimes it resulted in a lot of turnovers. The Raptors had a lot of ugly turnovers tonight, some unforced turnovers, a little, wait, weren't you supposed to be there? No, you're not there. Oh my God, I didn't see that. It was from Pascal. It was from Schroeder. I think there was one from Scotty as well. So I think what I can say is that there are two types of turnovers. There's a turnover that I consider to be a lazy turnover or a turnover due to like inefficient process. And then there's a turnover, like an aggressive turnover. Like sometimes you foul or you're going like really hard to the basket and you just, you get an offensive foul. I can live with aggression turnovers a little bit more than I can live with lazy, silly, dumb turnovers. And yeah, I think the Raptors had a lot of aggressive turnovers tonight, where maybe they were playing a little bit faster than they used to, passing a little bit more than they're used to, and then boom, you start putting the ball in people's hands who are not super used to passing the ball too much. It happens. I do want to point out one little thing about our friend Jack Armstrong. Last game, I made a really, really big stink about how biased Jack Armstrong's reporting was. And it was honestly so annoying. I can't even bring it into words. Like every second play, he was just like, oh my God, Pascal Siakam's great. Scottie Barnes needs to pick it up. Like it was so flagrant. It was ridiculous. And I don't know what he read prior to the game that caused him to, cover the game this way. But it was honestly nauseating. And I had to put the game on mute at one point. Today, I got to tell you, if I'm not a fan of Scottie Barnes, I'm putting the thing on mute again because he was like, oh my God. It was like, I was waiting for him to compliment Scottie on how well he breathed. It was ridiculous. And yet also like warranted because Scottie was having that good a game. But like, I mean, come on. Like, you can't be this transparent. I know that Raptors PR, they read everything. They know everything that's going on around social and stuff. So I'm really happy that this channel threw up enough of this thing. And I've noticed this several times, by the way, that whenever I call out people for being biased or being flagrant, usually I see a tone shift within 24 hours. And I'm really happy that if I had anything to do with this, it was really nice to see because I don't think I've ever heard Jack Armstrong this complimentary of Scottie Barnes. In fact, I would venture a guess, and this is an open challenge to anyone out there. Bet you anything there is now 2 games combined where you could find this many positive Scottie Barnes comments. I think at one point I pointed it out to my girlfriend while we were watching, and as I was pointing it out, he said 5 good things about Scottie Barnes in 5 straight sentences. It was honestly great, I guess. I don't know, but it was funny to hear, right? Okay, let's bring on some callers. Again, this is a call-in show. You can definitely call in. We'll try to keep the calls a little bit light because I am tethering this entire live off of my girlfriend's internet. She says she has 40 gigs, but I don't know how much these lives take up. Our internet has been really stingy like all day. I did a couple of lives earlier. To anyone who didn't watch them, they are 2 of my favorite and probably best lives ever. I'm pretty sure they're like 2 of the best ones I've ever done. The first one was how the Raptors and the Warriors lost their way on business nostalgia and drafting and coaching. And it's a really good deep dive into what the Raptors' plans are for this team going forward. And I think you'll get a lot from it. And then the second one, which was a very timely, man, that was like Scottie Barnes clutch, is Darko Rajakovic unlocking Scottie Barnes' full potential. Sorry, wow, Freudian slip. Pascal Siakam's full potential, in which I talked about this potential of what if he buys in, long term, what if he buys in, this notion of connecting and bridging gaps instead of being, dismissive and hateful and vengeful against the player who's not really buying in. And today, you saw a very, very happy Pascal Siakam, number one. Number two, you saw a very active Pascal Siakam. I don't think, at least for the first half, at least for the first 3 quarters, there was a lot of mistakes he made in the fourth quarter, and I'm not going to talk about those. But in the first 3 quarters, there were certain things that he was doing on defense that he just wasn't doing before. There were things that he was communicating on defense that he wasn't communicating before. And I felt like very vindicated in a way as well, because this is everything I've been complaining that he hasn't been doing all year. And I've been told that, what are you talking about? I'm not seeing this. And it's like today you saw him actually do the things that I'm saying he's not doing. And it felt like, I don't know, maybe it's ego. Maybe I'm just so frustrated with people telling me that I've been wrong. But this is exactly the way I've wanted Pascal Siakam to play all year. And you saw what it did for the Raptors offense. Now, defensively, the Raptors have a lot to clean up. Honestly, you cannot give up this type of efficiency and this type of defense on your home court against the Chicago Bulls. This game, probably with the way the Raptors played offensively and the way the Chicago Bulls played defensively, probably should have been like a 30-point blowout. So it's one of those weird things where you take a win, but there's going to be at least 25 to 30 things. And I think most of those things are going to be in the fourth quarter and third, where I think the Raptors kind of took their foot off the pedal a little bit. Final thing, I think I've kind of already bridged it a little bit, but Scottie Barnes, man, go back and really watch how many times this guy is calling out the play on the court. He may not have the ball and he may not look like a point guard to you, man, but like, dude, even on the inbound play, he's telling guys who to pass to on defense. He's yelling coverages. He's quarterbacking everything from the back line of the defense. I like this, man. Like, I like him being behind on defense. When he's up, he's relying on other people to clean up if he gets blown by, cover for him if he leaks, or also calling out screens and stuff, right? He's so loud. Like, I have a friend who was at the game tonight. She's like, yo, we can hear him like 25, 30 rows back. Like, it's crazy. Like, everyone can hear him in the whole gym. It's him. And then let me just say final kudos. We've been very critical of Darko Rajakovic. Let's be fair, right? We've been criticizing his rotations, criticizing this, criticizing that, criticizing usage. He coached a hell of a game tonight, and he was so engaged. It's not just because he was mic'd up. I promise. I think even when he wasn't mic'd up, he was super engaged. I mean, he was in his defensive stance. He's yelling out coverages. He's yelling out switches. So it's like on one end, you got Darko Rajakovic, and he's yelling out everything you need to do on offense. And on the other end, you got Scottie Barnes back there, and he's yelling out everything you got to do on defense. And he's yelling out to Gradey. It's like, it's great, man. Like, it's freaking awesome. This is what great teams look like. I'm not saying the Raptors are great. Please relax. But the Raptors moved to 500. This is exactly where they need to be. 500. Just get to the 20-game mark. It's 4 games away. And just be at 500. And you'll be fine. Okay. Lewis.
Hi.
How are you, man?
Oh, sorry. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm nervous. My first call, but I've been watching you since probably close to your very early since you started posting videos.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, well, I think we once in a while we like semi-interact on Instagram or Twitter and stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what'd you think of the game?
I was like when the game started about the 7-minute mark. I'm like, am I seeing this? And I literally the first thing I went was to go on Twitter or X and look Pensar Basketball and see what you were saying. He's like, I'm loving this game. I'm like, yes, exactly. I was pretty happy. I've been like a little noticing, like at least in the last like 5 or 6 games, like Scotty's touch is like really kind of like not great. Like every time he tries to kind of get his own like shot or something, he kind of like really struggles. Like shots that I feel like he should be making, and like he's not kind of like getting in.
Yeah, I wonder if there might be some injury stuff with him. Like at this point, he limps a lot.
Yeah.
Like he's been limping a lot. I've been noticing that, where every couple of like quarters, there's something where he's like gingerly walking up the court, and it just doesn't feel right. Like a little bit of the burst doesn't feel there. That being said, he like really guarded his butt off like in the fourth quarter. Like that was impressive effort and energy, and it was effective. Like it was very effective. Like he wasn't just pressing up on guys and giving them blow-bys. Like he was like really pressing up and forcing them to pass or forcing a double or something like that. So I thought he played smart, but like, yeah, you're right. His touch around the basket hasn't been super great. There've been a couple of like floater range, things that were just going in earlier in the year. They're just not going in right now. But I don't
Yeah, I
know.
wonder if it's because he plays so
Hard.
strongly, so hard. Yeah, then just he's always in pain, and I guess he just reserves himself for like bigger moments and stuff. Because then you see him like kind of like maybe being passive or slow or like limping, and then all of a sudden you see him like running, being the fastest player I ever seen, running from one side to the court to the other side of the court, just jumping over Zach Lavine, trying to block some random shot.
Hmm.
Wasn't even supposed to be there. I'm like, oh, that's an open layup, and also on CUC Scotty. I think it was on the of the second half, whereas I think Scotty just ran from of the one side to the other side just to try to like block Zach Lavine, and then I think went to a pass to the left side, and then I think it was like a missed shot or something.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely wasn't a perfect game for him offensively. I think he sort of picked his spots, but yeah, you're right. I mean, what they're asking him to do defensively, like pick up full court and then, set like 100 screens every offensive
Hmm.
possession, and he's all over the place. He's not really having any break
Hmm.
offensively. So when you get to the fourth quarter, like your legs are going to be really, really
Yeah,
dead,
I feel
right?
like a
So
lot of
that's
people.
gonna,
Sorry,
yeah.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I feel a lot of people don't also consider like, yeah, he's setting a lot of screens, so like you never, like he's a big guy, but then he's also like getting very big guys crushed against him consistently. That has to hurt, and like every other night, basically. Sometimes not back to back.
Yeah, he plays really hard. Like, I mean, he doesn't always play this hard, and you wish he did, but you can tell like there's moments where he just decides, okay, the next 5 minutes, like I'm changing this game,
Hmm.
and that's a gear that he can switch up to that pretty much no one on this team can really switch up to, offensively and defensively. Like Scotty's one of those weird players where he could have a 5.6 rebound, 2 assist night, and it's like 5 minutes later you look up and it's like 14, 9, 8. Like it's just like whoa, whoa. How did he do that in like a few minutes? But that's the type of impact he can have. I think a lot of people get frustrated. They're like, why doesn't he play like that all game? It's like nobody plays like that all game. Nobody can, nobody ever has, nobody ever will, because that would take like the most intense stamina. And so, it's going to be a work in progress. But yes, the bigger the person, the harder something like that is to do. And he's a really huge human being, and he's guarding full court. And I think he could just tell that Zach was like, I mean, the game was sort of tilting away a little bit. And he was just like, no, I want Zach LaVine. You want that from your better players, right? Like you want that from your leaders. You want that sort of defensive intensity. And I think like whether they needed him as a sort of help side shot blocker, like there was one play specifically in the fourth quarter where I don't know if it was an offensive rebound or something, but I believe it was off of an offensive rebound where Siakam started to go down in transition. Like he was just done with defense for that play, and he started leaking out. And his man effectively gets the ball and drives to the rim. And I think Scotty just like blocked it at the end. I have to look back on it. Like it was just one of those. I was so focused on Siakam going to the rim, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then Scotty just comes out of like nowhere and just like, it was either like it was off a rebound and he rebounded or something, but it was just like it was one of those plays where he just sort of saved it. It was probably it was probably a defensive rebound. But like, anyways, my point is like he was all over the place. He was exactly where you needed him. He was like Mr. Johnny on the spot. Yeah. Anyways, any final thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think my last one is like until you started the stream and I saw the box score, I thought Dennis Schroeder had a way better game than he had, probably because of like how unoffensive he was playing, like how like well, I think it was like one of the best, the most appealing games I had seen from Dennis Schroeder. That I didn't feel like he was like shocking all the shots or doing a lot of like bad shots. So even though he maybe his shots were not going in, I didn't really notice them because I guess they were like, okay, that's a good shot, missed. Okay, let's move on. And then now as you told me, I see, and it's like, oh no, like he one 3 point and like I don't know, he shot very bad this game, and I was like, oh, I thought he was having a great game, and I just had literally didn't even notice.
I'm so happy to hear this. Yeah, I'm like really happy to hear this because ultimately, like a lot of people are just they're like, oh, shot went in, good game. Shot went out, bad game. And I hate that mentality. I'm so happy that you're able to see this game this way, that you are able to gauge good shots and bad shots in real time. Because this is not something that most people can do. So thank you so much for calling in, Luis. I
Oh
really
no,
appreciate it. Is it Luis or Lewis?
Luis.
Luis, perfect. See you,
Thank
man.
you so much, man.
Cheers. Bye. Okay. Let's see. Let's get FA, NY4 Raps, Jesse, and Dell. How y'all doing? We got everybody
Good,
on.
good.
Yo, what's happening, people?
What's going on, man?
Oh my God, that's a
Yo,
lot
this
of
was a
people.
great game,
Good.
right?
FA, you kind of the odd guy out, man. You got no mic. Sorry, you got no camera.
I'm in the deck.
You're in the dark.
Yeah.
That's pretty dope. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
How you doing? How was that game for you?
It's good. I think
This is
what you
not
said
this is
is
not the enthusiasm level we are looking for. You
I
need
know.
to hold on. Well, let me give you some Scottie Barnes. Let's go.
Clap, 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 clap.
It's clap in your face, man.
I don't want to do that on DeMar DeRozan though, but that was fun.
Yo, bro, like I don't like he can be a Raptor legend on another day, but tonight he was the opponent, and I appreciate Scotty dancing in his like he just did some disco dance, like he was just like, all right, you go. I loved it. I loved every second of it. That is like honestly, man, like I've been listening to Dylan Brooks talk about what the Memphis Grizzlies are missing. That's how low my life has gotten. I'm listening to Dylan Brooks talk about basketball. Let me tell you something. He's accurately saying it. The Memphis Grizzlies are lacking swagger.
That's true.
Swagger is freaking important in basketball, especially when you can back it up with talent. Scotty can. And for him to play with force, energy, but also swagger, like
Yeah.
when's the last time we had someone who dared to like do that to DeMar? You know, just clap in his face, flex all up on him, like Dan says he's getting a I like this. You know, this is like something that a lot. This is, I think, something that Dell talked about. He talked about Dell, who's right there. He talked about identity, right? Like teams that play with identity. And the San Antonio Spurs had an identity. The Detroit Pistons had an identity. Well, like, what if the Raptors are finding their identity? Swagger, playing with swagger.
It was a very great game.
Can I just jump in on there?
Also not the energy we are looking for.
I'm just gonna jump in on there right now. I'm gonna jump in and say like,
I was scared
it's
when
like
it got to
Scotty's
7
rookie
points. Is it 7 points? Yeah, 7 points. So I think we shouldn't have played Gary Trent in the fourth quarter at all because they were just going through him. So anytime they bench Scotty, you know what happens. You guys got to put him back. He had a great, even though you don't see he had like 13 or 14 points, but
who did?
I still think
Scottie Barnes.
Yeah. So
he had 13 points.
Yeah, 11 shots. I think Scotty needs to take more shots than 11 shots. Pascal, 12 shots as well, needs to take more. Schroeder did not play a great game tonight, like always. I'm becoming not a great fan of Schroeder because he holds the ball too freaking much.
You know, your brother pretty much owns the real estate on DennisSchroederFans.com, eh?
No. I think
you sold. You sold your domain for like $2.
I was telling Paul during the game today that I think now I'm agreeing with Rob that Schroeder should play off the ball, right? Scotty or Pascal should always touch the ball because he bounces the ball too much, like Chish. Like it slows down the offense.
You don't think he was better today? I thought he was better today. I mean, I know he missed a lot of shots, but I thought he played a lot better today.
But what of the passing? All the like
no, the passing is shit. But he's not a good passer. Look, I'll actually share with you something that
a point guard not a good passer. There's something wrong with that thing.
He's not a point guard.
He's a point guard. He's a shooting guard.
Okay, so I'm glad that after 15 games, 16 games, we've come to that conclusion that I tried to present to you guys. Like, I don't know, like in the off season, FA, bro, I gotta be like, I told you so. I'm gonna pull up our DMs, man. We gotta pull up our DMs and be like,
but for what we're paying, he's still doing well, though. So
he's really good for mid-level exception, and trust me, there's not a chance in hell right now if I could swap him for Fred VanVleet 1-for-1 that I would. I'm very happy with this decision. What I will say, however, is that if he allows himself to play more off the ball like he did today, it's going to force him to become more of a shooter the way he was today. And he just can't go for one for 9. That's it. And he's probably not going to go 1 for 9 again on the season. Watch him go 1 for 9 like the next 5 games. Okay. Hopefully he will not go 1 for 9. He is not a very good shooter. I can tell you that conclusively based on his entire career, that this is a guy who will probably finish the season averaging 33 to 34%. Okay. Like he's just not a great shooter. Right now, Scottie Barnes is the best 3-point shooter on your team. I can't believe I'm saying that with a straight face, but it's true. Like he is the only guy who's able to hit those right now consistently. He's the only one who's not really, apart from like one game in Chicago, I think it was, or I can't remember who it was against, where he had like 2 for 8 or 2 for 9 or something. Apart from that game, you wipe that one game out, he's shooting like 40% from 3 on the season. It's pretty impressive. So I don't know. I think overall, like the problem with, okay, so here's the thing. We all want Dennis and Pascal to move off the ball a little bit more, right? Problem is, move off the ball with Jakob Poeltl on the floor. Now you got 2 guys off the ball who can't shoot. Now, whoever's on the ball in that case, theoretically, in your case, Scotty, now has to work with a completely packed paint and not a super advanced big bag, right? And as much as Scotty has thrived as a pick and roll ball handler this year, I think if you really, really start to go to it too much, if you start to go to isolation scoring too much with him, he'll struggle. He will struggle. He's not there yet. That's just my read on it. I'm watching him play. I don't think his skill work is to the point where you can just put the ball in his hands 25 times a game and say, bro, go get us something off the dribble. He'll be a better passer than Schroeder.
But I want him to start
will be worse because Schroeder is a worse shooter. Go ahead.
I want him to start going through those mistakes right now, right? Because we know we're not going to win championship this year. So why not let Scotty start going through the mistakes now and start letting him grow from there?
He is.
But not enough.
No, I get you. And I mean, there's a theory or like a theoretical way that you could think about the game where you'd be like, okay, we can just put the ball in his hands like 25 times a game in the mid post, ISO area, whatever, and just ask him, go attack that. But that's not really ever going to be his game now or in the next year. Like, that's just not his game. His game is transition, mixed bag, like kind of in the post, popping up. Like, he's just all over the place. He's like one of those guys who's going to have to find his offense and be, like he's going to have to do a lot of different things. But like, my point is, like, if you don't put shooters around him, until you put that roster around him, you can't really ask him to play that role because the players around him are not optimized. So you want to put him in a position, say like in the mid post, like you're saying, like we got to give him those options now. Okay. You put him in the mid post and you put Jakob in the low post. So paint clogged, second defender right there. Then you put Dennis and Pascal on the court, regardless of who the 5th guy is, whether it be OG, Gary, Gradey, it doesn't matter. There's not enough gravity on the court to make him effective in that spot. Mm-hmm. He's not quick enough. He's not quick enough or good enough. He's not Kevin Durant. He can't do that right now. So until you trade some guys and put Kevin Huerter and, like a very evolved version of Gradey Dick and all these movement shooters and actual spacing around him, he simply doesn't have the angles to drive right now. That's not a criticism of Scotty. That is a criticism of what the offense would look like if you ran through him and made the other guys space for him.
Around him, yeah.
Right? Jesse, what'd you think, man?
Yeah, I think that this game was it reminded me of the Scotty from his rookie season where he was just so excited to be in the NBA and bring that energy every single night. And I really loved seeing that come back out. And I think that's something, as much as we're critical of Darko for some of his in-game adjustments, the one thing that's completely undeniable is how he's empowered every single player on this team to try and be the best version of themselves on the court, off the court.
True.
And it really feels like he's recaptured that joie de vivre of being that Scotty who gets to go clap and dance and point and shout and yell and antagonize and bring that energy. And that translates to not only his own game, like we saw on the defensive end a few times this season, and it was really apparent tonight, but the ability for him to also bring that to the other players on the floor. And this is the second game in a row where he had a no-look drop-off behind the back pass that led to a dunk. That you were talking about this 3 or 4 weeks ago of points that mean 2 points that are actually 4 points, or these points mean more. They really bring something extra to the table. And whenever something like that happens, like a Scottie Barnes running across the floor, block right at the end, or just shooting between the lane and getting that steal, disrupting the opposing offense, and then it transitions into him going back down the floor the other way with a no-look drop-off pass that brought the entire arena to a whole new level on that crowd was, let's be real tonight, was on TV. It didn't sound as loud as it normally does. So either they muted the audio or something like that, but
They did.
that really
They were a
really
lot louder.
sounded
They were a lot louder in real life.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. My
That's
friend
good.
shared a couple of videos with me. I don't know if I'm able to pull them up here, but yeah, it was pretty cool. The atmosphere was good. Leave it to the Raptors to finally put together a full competitive game in this in-season tournament after they get eliminated from said in-season tournament. It's the most Raptor thing to do, you know? But I don't care. I'll take this. This was great. This was great process. This was a great win. I know the stat line doesn't look great for Scotty, right? It was 13, 10, and 6. Pure Draymond type, right? I'll tell you, this was probably his second best game of the season from my perspective.
Yeah, his best. I think it was his best overall game this season in terms of how he approached that bench lineup as well.
You slept through San Antonio, eh? Okay, that's nice. I'm kidding. No. I get you. Honestly, his impact, everything you don't measure is what he did.
Yes.
Everything you don't measure, all the communication, all the energy. And I like that point that you brought up about some points being worth more than others. And yes, it is harping back to something I talk about a lot, which is momentum swings and stuff like that. There are literally certain points that mean 10 points. That sounds crazy.
And it was obvious. Anytime you take Scotty off the game, you just see how points go down and they start coming back. So it was so obvious his impact on the game.
And if I was Dak, I would have married his minutes with Zach Lavine's minute, because he was really holding Zach Lavine.
Well, I don't really think anyone was holding Zach Lavine. Zach Lavine had a super efficient night and he scored 36 points. But I think he disrupted enough.
He did the best.
He did do the best, and I think he also did a great job on DeMar. I think it's so funny. Sometimes you're never going to stop these types of players.
That's true.
When they go fair,
yeah. So you have to do, and this is when I talk about the game within the game. What you have to do is say, okay, we are not going to stop Zach Lavine. But can we do 3 things? Number 1, can we force him off the line into mid-range shots? Number 2, can we shut down DeMar DeRozan? Can we at least do that? So we don't have both of these guys putting 35 on us. Can we just pick one and then stop the other, right? So we'll double, effect on that guy. And we'll just trust that Zach Lavine is not going to hang 65 on us because he doesn't feel like it. And, again, you plan and then you replan during the game. If what you're trying to do isn't working, then you have to go to something else, right? But there's always this game within a game that we talk about where okay, this guy is going to kill us in the paint, but he's not getting a single shot outside the paint. Or, you'd never say that. You would say the opposite. This guy's going to kill us outside the paint, but he's never getting inside the paint. Or this guy's going to kill us from 3, but we're never letting him drive. Or we're going to let him drive. We're going to funnel him left. Or we're going to let him. We're going to let him. We're going to shut off his left hand. We know he likes to pass with his left hand. We're going to disrupt his left hand passing. We're going to force him to pass with his right hand because we know he's less effective at that. That's the game within the game, right? And sometimes you live and die with these decisions. It depends on your scouting. It depends on a little bit of luck too. Great players have a way of doing this. So every single time, if I'm scouting against Pascal Siakam, I'm going to force him to make a pass with the hand that I know he's less effective with, banking on at least one more turnover. I'm going to force him to turn over a shoulder that I know he's not going to be comfortable. I'm going to try to push him out to about 12 feet as opposed to letting him catch within 8 feet, because I know he's going to be a little less effective. Or I might actually do the math on this and the calculus on this and determine that he's actually a lot better catching the ball off 12 feet. So I'm actually going to surrender 8 feet. This is what I'm talking about. So if you do all the things that your game plan dictates that you do, ultimately you win. Whether you lose or win, you win. You know, because if you do everything your scouting report tells you and you lose, that's just bad luck. I say this a lot. 97% execution for a half talented team will register 60 wins, right? Certain teams have a propensity to execute 97% a lot. Like, there are teams like this that are just really, really, really smart, and they execute really well, and they don't have a lot of self-inflicted errors. And then and you're always going to have a night where you just don't have it, or a night where you're just turning the ball over, you're a little loose with the ball or whatever, you just disconnected, something happened, whatever. This happens to every team. But I think if teams play 97% basketball a lot, I'm trying to think of like really, really well executed teams. QB Browns, Grizzlies come to mind. Like, that was a really, really great team in terms of execution. But yeah, there are teams like this. I think the Raptors executed well for the most part today. Yeah.
Agreed.
Del, what were your thoughts, man?
Like, on that, one of the things that I really wanted to make a point of emphasis about from the game that I saw. Obviously, we're seeing many good things that we can talk about. Scotty, Pascal, whatever, we can get into that. But for me, it was really, really about the coaching. The thing that I was looking for the whole season was how quickly is it going to take us to play 48 minutes with the requisite effort where we can see a certain process and identity on the floor. And even if that results in a loss, no one wants that. I'm not talking about that not being important, but this has to be a building block thing. This game made me feel like Darko has the right mentality as far as what he wants to establish in the team. I feel like he's trying to, I don't want to like presume to speak for him, but it feels to me like he's trying to establish a certain floor of what the team will way more often than not give you on a nightly basis. And that to me is really the more important thing in this first season of what he's trying to establish. Because if you can do that, you also, as a head coach, get better with your calls, you know, the little things, timeouts, play calls, inbounds, all that kind of stuff. And then you also establish identity. And now the players that you've empowered, they can all trust that you're going to communicate with them in the right way. If there's ever a time that the front office has to make another decision, it doesn't necessarily need to be plug and play. But to my eye, you've now established an environment that players want to be in, whether they know it or not. They'll be like able to get into that environment with and see how everyone else has taken to the system and what the coach is saying. But on top of that, now in terms of if it is a plug and play situation, you will surprise people by how quickly you're able to elevate to the next level. And for me, obviously it's a good game, good win. We all feel good. But I'm looking like, what does this mean for when we're in game 60 mode? If we go through a 4-game losing streak, I'm not going to be disheartened, because this guy, I think he is the guy for what we need right now. And for the subsequent seasons, if we can keep, a lot of things have to go well, I feel good about this team.
No, I completely agree with you, Del. Like, I had someone reach out to me a couple of days ago. I'm not going to name names about it, but as someone who I trust more than almost anyone in the basketball world. And they were just giving me a little bit of feedback, and I'm not at liberty to read what they wrote because they won't give me privilege to, but they won't give me the permission to. But it gave me a little bit more insight in terms of what I'm missing with what the Raptors are trying to do. And it dictated a lot of my content decisions today as well, specifically these 2 videos. And one of the things I'm realizing is that Darko Rajakovic is really, really good at coaching. All facets of coaching, humans, the human element of coaching, connection, etc. And it's something that I talked about a lot in my earlier live, which was this one, was specifically that if someone does not trust you, if someone does not believe you, if someone does not believe in what you're saying, then it doesn't matter what you're saying. What you're saying to them will fall on deaf ears, go in one ear, out the other. The greatest thing about tonight's game was seeing how much Pascal Siakam smiled. That sounds really weird for the internet's biggest Pascal Siakam hater apparently to say, but it was a really important thing for me because seeing him bought in was so important. Body language is a very, very telling thing. His body language has not been good for most of the season so far. his body language in pressers, his body language during practices, his body language during locker room huddles. It's just not been good. He's been kind of isolated and out on his own.
Very, very, very true. I saw him in Boston live, and his body language, it felt like he didn't want to be there. But
Exactly.
seeing him today, right from the beginning, you see he got his 8 assists in the first quarter, in the first half of the game. So you can see he was so into defense, was so into passing the ball when it was doubled. So it really felt like he wanted to be there today.
Yeah,
and to that point too, right? Left to me, like I watched your video this afternoon. I think it was Poeltl, right? Look at Precious Achiuwa, how he's been playing like crap, right? But you can see that with the coach buying into him, right? He's getting better, and he's obviously he played a lot better today, making quicker passes, and also
he made a
better
really
on
good
defense.
pass too.
Yeah,
that was slick.
Yeah.
And when he rebounded the ball, offensive rebound, right, he didn't try to gather his leg and turn over. He made several good passes out of the post.
Larry Kane, thank you so much for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck on everything you're doing over there, sir. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Darko has had incredible patience, like to go through mistakes. And I think it's really paying off. Like, I think it's paying off brilliantly. I think his players are responding to that. And one of the things that I mentioned in that live, this afternoon was like, you really can't. Every time you establish your relationship with one player, you're technically affirming your relationship with all players. So imagine right now, right? Like, let's just say right now, I get really pissed off at Jesse because Jesse says something really stupid. Please don't. But imagine if he does, right? Now, Jesse's like, yo, man, Pascal Siakam better than Jason Tatum. Banned right away. Banned, like ban hammer out, like that, right? And I tell him he's a fucking idiot or something like that, and I throw him off, right? Have I not impacted my relationship with all of you?
Yep.
I didn't say anything to you, but I have now suddenly made it a more hostile place for you to voice an opinion that you feel like I might disagree with. Nobody wants to be yelled at. Nobody wants to be called a fucking idiot. Nobody wants to be benched for a fourth quarter. So if you make a decision like benching Pascal Siakam for, I don't know, a fourth quarter because he keeps missing rotations or whatever, if you yell at him in the locker room, if you have like this sort of pissy body language around him, you now allow other people to feel that, right? And this is when I say, like, man, this guy, we may come from the same city, we may come from the same country, we may drink a lot of freaking coffee, as evidenced by the fact that I'm drinking coffee at 11:18. I mean, we may have a lot in common in terms of how we see Scottie Barnes and how we see the game, but man, I am learning a million things about how this guy approaches people in like this really positive way. Assume positive intent. People aren't trying to hurt you. So I have always assumed that Pascal Siakam is trying to sabotage the offense. And I'm just like, and then, the person who reached out to me, they're like, what if he doesn't trust the offense? And that was my flip moment. I was like, well, what reason does he have to trust Darko Rajakovic? Like, he didn't do all the research that I did this summer. He doesn't know Darko Rajakovic is, all he's hearing is Darko Rajakovic is here to, develop the youth. I'm 29 years old. What am I, chopped liver? So I completely understand it. And I just, seeing Pascal Siakam happy. Honestly, man, even sometimes last year, even with his boy Nick Nurse and his boy Fred VanVleet, he didn't seem happy. It seemed like he was kind of fighting through things, right? Especially on a night where like the offense wasn't going through him. Really felt like he was fighting through things.
Exactly. And if you look at Gradey Dick still getting some minutes, even though he's not playing the best. If it was last season, Gradey Dick would have been on the bench, at the end of the bench.
So no, Gradey Dick would never see the floor again for the rest of the season. If it was last season, it's true. If he had any of the games he had in the first 3 games, Nick Nurse would have just kept him on the bench for the rest of the season.
Actually,
or he would have got sent down to the G League.
If there's one thing, there's one thing I can add to that, actually, not to cut you off, is just I feel like we can give him the kudos. It's just really important to have that context for a first-year head coach. That pressure to make the right decisions and make things look good and to feel like you're doing, that you yourself are doing the right things. And for everyone to also affirm you can make you do crazy things. And that has not, obviously with this guy's character, I haven't done the research as Rob has done. But with this guy's character, he's not that way. But this pressure can make you that way. And for him to not lean into that and to really go the other direction, which is empower the youth, make sure the lines of communication are always clear, make sure even things that would affect him, he's willing to take those darts from everyone else, people questioning his own decisions and such, and still make the right call, and still put the future like ahead of himself. Gotta give him credit for that, I would say.
Can I
Absolutely.
jump in on that? Because like what it comes down to for me is I don't know if any of you have taken leadership classes or been to anything like that.
Sure.
But the one thing that they always tell you, and when you're in a position of leadership and when you have to act upon that, is you need to be consistent in your messaging and confident in who you are.
Yes.
And wavering opens you up for those questions from people who are, I'm not really sure about this guy. Is this person qualified to lead me? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But if you're confident about it and you know what you're talking about and you studied and you can show and you can prove that this is the truth for me, people will follow.
Right.
Correct.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I mean, a lot of people have taken leadership classes and wound up to be pretty poor leaders.
Yeah.
And I've seen some pretty poor leadership from someone that I know was on the Raptors bench last year, who is now currently a head boss somewhere else. And I've seen a lot of examples of poor leadership from him already too. So I think what I would say is that, players are a lot smarter. They're lied to constantly. These players are lied to every freaking day. They're lied to by friends. They're lied to by fake family members who want money. They're lied to by fans. They're lied to by so many people. So at some point, they just want the truth. Chris Boucher, man, he just wants the truth. Like, he just wants the truth. Did I play well or did I not play well? And they don't want the politics and they don't want the favoritism. They just want the straight truth. And how can I get better? At the end of the day, if you can convince a player of two things, number one, that you know what you're doing, and number two, that you have their best interests, it'd be very, very hard for a player to really not pay attention to what you're doing and what you're saying. Correct. I think that what Darko Rajakovic really needed was an example, and he made one in Malachi Flynn. This is a player that a lot of people probably doubted, myself certainly leading the pack on that one, right? I think I led the internet. I led the internet on the wave Malachi to Taiwan bandwagon, and as much as but you have to understand how his teammates felt about him. I think his teammates were rooting for him. His teammates wanted him to succeed. And they saw this coach not go to Pascal Siakam and Scottie Barnes and say, you are the people that I'm focused on. No, they saw him focus on Malachi. And he really found the greatest, let's say, avatar, example, whatever the I don't know, the advocate, because really Malachi doesn't really have like that kind of swing in the locker room. It's not like a power play. It's more like a demo. Malachi was a demo. Buy in, trust, and see what I can do for you. If I can do this for him, I can do this for you too, right? And I don't necessarily know if it was that calculated, but he strikes me as someone who's a little bit smarter than your average bear. And it feels like a really great demo to get out of the way right away, right? Yeah. Like, I look at timing as there are no accidents. There's coincidence and then there's remarkable coincidences. And I just think that Malachi playing this brilliant game is just the perfect demo of the faith that Darko has shown in him. Darko mentioned in a presser where he said that, he gave Malachi this thing about Tom Brady and winning the shift and whatever. And if you want more playing time, earn it. And Malachi had heard this before. He'd heard this from probably Nick Nurse. He'd probably heard this from the entire coaching staff. You want more playing time? Play harder. Every player has heard this. But he also was given some sort of reassurances that he wouldn't have to look over his shoulder. Well, 3 games in, and he was benched. For an entire second half, he was benched. And I think that was the watershed moment for Malachi. His entire season turned around after that game because he was allowed to have his rotation spot again. As I nearly pulled out my hair the next game when he checked in. I was like, you're kidding me. This guy's back in the fucking game. Are you kidding me? I almost smashed my television. Because he was bleeding minutes, bro. Like, he was terrible those first 3 games. Like, don't come at me about it. Like, he was awful. But there's something that he showed me in that, which is he continued to have faith. But more importantly, he showed Malachi. More importantly, he showed the entire locker room that he's a person of his word. Right? So now people are like, okay, he's not just keeping his promises to the big guys. He's not just keeping his promises to Scottie Barnes and, O.G Anunoby and Pascal Siakam and his high paid guys. He's keeping his promises to the second, third string guard, right? Now you have integrity, because at the end of the day, what does Pascal Siakam really want? He wants to be the best player he can be. What does Scottie Barnes really want? He wants to be the best player he can be. I told you all last year, like Fred VanVleet, I think he's selfish as fuck, but I don't think Pascal Siakam's selfish. I think he's self-concerned. There is a difference, right? You can be concerned about yourself without being selfish, right? If you're in a dark alley and somebody approaches you with a knife, you're not selfish. You're self-concerned, justifiably so. So Pascal Siakam is in dangerous waters. He has a front office that has not extended him. They have not offered him an extension. There's allegations and accusations of being selfish. He's lost the only coach and like one of his best friends on the team. He is on an island by himself, and you felt it. And certain people react differently to that. Some people are very collaborative in that situation. They try to find community. Some people further isolate themselves. You cannot have Pascal Siakam further isolating himself. So instead of allowing him to do that, he welcomed him. He embraced him. And I started to see a shift in Pascal Siakam really when Chris Boucher won that, chain, and you saw Siakam's reaction. And then I was like, maybe this is an isolated incident. Maybe, and then they gave him more usage, and they allowed the ball to go through him. And then Scotty's having these like low usage games. And then maybe Pascal Siakam's looking around like, oh, maybe this guy is not here to just dethrone me as the first option. He's actually going to allow me to, to play within the offense. And now, after building some trust after 15 games, now you can approach him and say, hey, Pascal, for this game, I want you to pass out of those double teams, and we're going to get you going a little bit later. And now, since he's already seen him keep his promises to everybody else, now he'll be like, okay, I can buy into that. Let's try that.
Yes.
And that's what you saw today. Go ahead.
Do you think that as you said all that, it kind of clicked to me. Maybe that's why we're not seeing Otto Porter in some of these games, because he's trying to do that for some of those other players, and he knows that he can have his veterans sit for a whole game, and they're not going to make waves. They're not going to break the locker room. They're not going to pout. They're not going to kick cans across the room, and they're still going to be professionals and come back and play the next game when they do get their minutes. And it's trying to get those other guys going so that later in the season, we can spread the wealth a little bit more.
That's a great call, Jesse.
Yeah, and I mean, also, you have to understand, like, there's a longer-term vision for how you want to utilize your roster throughout the year. There are first-half players, there are first-quarter players, there are third-quarter players, there are fourth-quarter players, there are playoff players. I think the goal is to slowly build Otto up. There's no doubt in my mind. Like, here's one thing. I'm just kind of noticing just from chatting with a friend of mine 2 days ago. I don't think there's any doubt that there's something that I see and Darko hasn't seen it 2 times better, 2 times sooner. Like, I'm going to approach that conversation with humility, that if I'm seeing Pascal Siakam doing something on the basketball court, he's seeing it before I am. And if I see that Otto Porter is the best option on the court, like his 5th or 6th best player, he certainly knows it. Like, he absolutely knows it. He would be absolutely an idiot to not know it, and he's not an idiot. So he knows how good Otto is. He knows Otto is a better player than Precious right now. He knows Otto is a better player. He knows that Otto is a better player than Gradey. He knows Otto is a better player than freaking Gary. He knows Otto is a better player than most of these guys. There might be starters that Otto is better than. Otto might be a better player than Jakob, Poeltl, and Dennis Schroeder. That being said, he is a 30-year-old veteran coming off of 3-4 years of injuries. So maybe this is like one of those things where, hey man, this might be a really, really good player to have if we end up making the play-in and you're not, or the playoffs, and you're certainly not going to have him available if you run him into the ground during the regular season. That's not to say that he can't play 7 or 8 minutes a night, but what is the benefit if you don't need it, right? Now, if you did need it, like if there was a game where certainly the matchup dictated it, or you had an injury, certainly you can do that. But I also think Otto is sort of working himself in. He doesn't look nearly as bursty or as fast as he did last year. And I don't think that's part of the natural aging process. I think that's just him slowly working it back. So maybe there's a plan, where right now we're going to try to keep him to, let's say there's like a weekly limit of like 70 minutes a week, 60 minutes a week or something like that. And then towards the later end of the season, like maybe towards the playoffs, now we have like a 20 to 25 minute restriction where he's like playing on a shortened bench rotation of like 8 guys or 9 guys. You know what I mean? On a consistent basis. Yeah.
And remember, Otto played back to back the last 2 games, so maybe this is a good time to rest him.
Did he?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Otto played against Indiana?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he did. He didn't play that many minutes, and the previous game was garbage time, man. It doesn't count.
But still back to back, right? For somebody coming off injuries.
In the shoot around time, Otto is our best shooter.
He is our best shooter, and for a team that's starving for spacing, you would imagine that the super genius coach has figured that out. I will say one more thing, and I pointed out this fact in the live before, but this is a screen grab from a video I watched by Michael McKelvey, and he's talking about the Spurs shine, and 49 of the 74 players that played on the roster during the Duncan, Manu, Tony era, they had this incredible uptick in efficiency because of the ball movement. And if you ever Google Greg Popovich coaching tree, oh my God, like the influence that this guy's had. Technically, Darko Rajakovic is part of his coaching tree. Did you know this? Because of Monty Williams. Sam Presti hired Darko Rajakovic. Sam Presti is part of Greg Popovich's coaching tree. Monty Williams hired Darko Rajakovic in Phoenix. He is also part of Greg Popovich's coaching tree. Birds of a feather flock together. We say this very often on this channel, and it's very true for Darko Rajakovic. He is definitely of the school of thought of Greg Popovich. Maybe not the master manipulator that Greg Popovich is, but certainly the proponent for ball movement and egalitarian offenses. And one thing that I've just sort of realized over the years, especially watching Kobe, watching Tim Duncan, watching Michael Jordan, watching Steph Curry, if your best player does not want to be coached, you cannot be successful. Right. It's impossible. Yep. Throw Bill Russell and Red Auerbach, it goes right back to that, right? I mean, if your best player has a piss poor attitude, like no offense, Allen Iverson or Carmelo Anthony or someone like that, I love both those guys, but they never really completely bought into team, in my opinion. Very rarely, butting heads with with Larry Brown or butting heads with George Karl or whatever between those two guys. You look at how Eric Spoelstra coaches, Dwayne Wade, or how he coached Jimmy Butler. He'll yell at Jimmy Butler. He'll yell at Kyle Lowry. Now, it makes it's easier to sort of like the same philosophy here, right? Can you, like, if you can't coach Pascal Siakam, you can't coach. If you can't coach, so if Pascal Siakam is allowing you to be hard on him in practice and you're not afraid to do that, now everyone else can fall in line. But if they see, and the other thing I'll say is like something that I brought up in the live earlier, and this is sort of like an underrated point, but very, very important, is that one of the things that I think created the dysfunction and the toxicity last year was that you had a coach who wasn't coaching all his players equally. Yeah. You were seeing Gary Trent Jr. getting hooked and quick hooks and benched for things that Fred was doing, and Fred was not being held accountable for it, right? And that rubbed, I think, a lot of people the wrong way in the locker room. Like, how come he can do what I can't do? That's not fair. So now, if you have a coach who's actually holding, everyone to the same standard, well, this is actually much better. And so if that coach were to, in fact, have favorites, like if he demonstrated to the locker room that Scottie Barnes and O.G Anunoby are my favorite players, and I don't like Pascal Siakam, like if it was me, then that would actually disrupt chemistry a lot, I think. Because even if we could be like, oh, great, Darko Rajakovic is giving Scottie Barnes more touches or whatever, I think there would still be like 4 or 5 people who would feel some way about it. Least of all, I think maybe Scottie Barnes would feel some sort of way about it, right? So, yeah, I think it's really important.
No. Well said, yeah.
Any final thoughts, guys? We lost FA. FA went to sleep.
My final thought is favorite play of the game for each one of us. Mine was Scotty drawing that foul in the fourth quarter on Zach LaVine. That was my favorite play of the game. And we didn't talk a whole lot about OG, but what a game by OG.
He played great. Yeah.
OG and Scotty, untouchable. We can't trade both of them. Untouchable in the team right now. My favorite part was the hug from what's his name again? Our president, Isaiah Ujiri, yeah. When he hugged DeRozan, yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
I mean, I feel like you stole my. I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I feel like we can bring DeRozan back. I think we'll be in good shape.
No, thank you.
I veto this. I veto this so hard.
Like, I love them all. Don't get me wrong. It's not even that. It's just
I love him too, but like no.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't think I had a favorite play of the game. I just liked the whole. For me, that they gave me 48 minutes. Even at the end, when things seemed a little dicey, everyone stayed together, and it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like we won the wrong way or like things fell apart. And that consistent focus. If I can give credit to that, that's it for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, watching DeMar get ejected as Scotty did, like the little dance, was definitely up there. Just from a trolling perspective of watching one of my favorite Raptors of all time get trolled by one of my favorite Raptors of all time. But I think my favorite play was Pascal Siakam's corner three, like the one that he hit, and he just was like, "Thank God," and he smiled. Yeah. That was like, to me, it was like playing with joy. Because there was a three that he hit a couple of games ago where he legitimately looked like he was trying to break a curse. Like, you remember it? Like, he was just like, I do. Thank God. Yeah, like he's doing the crosses and he's like, what the hell, you know? And you can tell that he was really fighting himself. And in that moment, I just saw the body language of someone who's really pressing and playing with a lot of pressure. And today I saw the body language of someone who's playing with a lot of joy, and playing with joy, you know, playing basketball with joy is like really, really important. So that was probably my favorite play. Yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for coming on. This was a very lively discussion. Yeah. See you guys.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye. Okay. Two final callers, Coach Mo and another Mo, Mohammed. Sorry.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Can you turn off your YouTube? Sorry, I'm gonna have to mute you for a second. Yeah, can you just turn off your YouTube? Jesus Christ. Okay. I'm just gonna. Okay, he's gone. Coach Mo, what's up, man?
I'm good. I'm gonna try to make it quick, but first things first. Jack Armstrong talking about Scotty's compete level, I swear, for like 10 minutes straight had me thinking.
He's paying attention?
The implication there is like he was a lazy sack of shit last year. Oh, and what a breath of fresh air that he's working hard. He's playing. He's earning a paycheck tonight, everybody. This dude, bro, I'm almost done with this guy. Like, I'm looking for... I need help. I don't know if chat knows where I can like watch, quality stream on another broadcasters. But yeah, there's that.
Yeah,
I'm almost sick of this guy. Like,
well, I mean, at least he was paying him credit as opposed to.
But it was condescending credit. It became condescending when you keep going over and over and over again. But anyways, there
was like one sentence where I felt that way. But for the most part, I thought he was genuinely just appreciative. But
effort. Is he Patrick Beverly, bro? Relax. Anyways,
fair enough. Yeah.
The Darko pulling Scotty in the fourth quarter to get a little breather, and then everything collapsed, and then he's standing at the scores table, and then he waited. PTSD. Now he waited. It's like sometimes I'm looking at Darko and I'm like, dude, the momentum's swinging. Just call the timeout. Why did you have to wait for it to get?
I thought he was pretty good about that today.
Yeah, but on that specific time, he waited 1-3 too many, right? Because it was slipping. Another thing with his Darko's Barnes sub pattern is weird, and Dennis played one more minute than Scotty this game, which should be a crime. That should never happen. So the sub pattern is weird to me. Just that's me personally. Now, speaking of Dennis, everyone knows I'm not a fan, but today he played so much better than he did last game, even though last game he made all his shots. or
Right.
close to them, right?
I'm so glad you see that. Yeah.
He made quick decisions. He got off the ball. I think, the whole Vision 6'9" thing we got going on, and obviously Fred didn't fit. Dennis doesn't really fit either because they're not 6'9", obviously, but
He's a lot closer to that fit, man.
Oh, yeah,
you look at Cole Anthony, he's just big enough.
Oh my
Jalen
God.
Suggs, he's just big enough. So like with Schroeder, he may not be he's barely 6'1", right? But his wingspan,
yes,
he feels bigger.
But my point in bringing that up is if you want to optimize your three best players, right? The only way you're truly going to optimize these three guys with this current roster is Scotty has to start at point. He has to. Pascal Siakam is going to be your number one option, leading field goal attempts guy. That's his role. He scores inside. That's his role. OG is 3-and-D plus. That's the only way you're going to truly get. And Dennis has to go to the bench. I would actually start Malachi Flynn.
Whoa.
I'd start Malachi Flynn over. It's either Gary or Malachi, but now
I think
because Scotty's magic. Scotty, like I agreed with what you said, and I was saying the same thing because I went to Real Gym and they're like, Scotty's not being aggressive. Scotty, I'm like, Scotty, you don't just hand the ball to Scotty and say score. That's not his game. That was never Magic's game. Like he's not doing that. That's not how they play. And you have to let him be him.
If you ever want to lose more brain cells, definitely go to Real GM more often.
It's bizarre. It's like, see, they passed it to Scotty. I was like, yeah, they passed it to Scotty at in the corner with Caruso standing right in front of him. It's like, yeah, great. Now make something happen. That's not his game. But for him to truly play his game and for Pascal to truly play his game and for them to coexist, Scotty has to run point and Pascal has to be the number one option. They have to do the quasi Jordan Pippen thing, the Magic Kareem thing, that dynamic of Swiss Army knife score. But with Dennis there or Fred there, there's always going to be like one guy's kind of just standing there.
So the thing about Dennis that I think is good, right? Number one, point of attack defense. Number two, I mean, he's quick. He's quicker than pretty much every single player on your team, which is crazy to say, but it's definitely true. That quickness can collapse the defense. It's not Ja Morant, it's not De'Aaron Fox, but it's like some miniature homeless version of that, right? To use your term, homeless shelter, right?
Yeah.
That is a really important thing to have in your starting lineup. Now, putting Dennis on the bench and Jakob on the bench was my initial idea to start Otto or to start Gary, and that was just mainly predicated on this idea of space, right? But the spacing in that lineup is important, but then you have nobody who can really take it off the dribble. Scotty's not necessarily quick enough. Siakam's not necessarily dynamic enough. OG doesn't have it. Gary doesn't have it. And Otto doesn't have it. So nobody can get past their man. Nobody can force the rotation. This is the one thing that Dennis could give. Now, the one thing that I will say that has driven me absolutely bonkers about him all season that did not drive me bonkers today is time on the ball and quickness of initiation of the offense. So one of the reasons why I think Darko has opted to go with, the guards initiating as opposed to the wings initiating, which is, something that we saw under Nick Nurse initially with Fred VanVleet off the ball in the first, 10 games of last season. You remember a lot of Scotty, a lot of Pascal. There are advantages to this, right? Like transition, putting this, if they can get into the middle of the floor, they can force a collapse right away. And, there are advantages to that. The problem is Fred VanVleet can do things that a Schroeder can't do off the ball, right? That Fred VanVleet is a real legitimate spacing nightmare for other teams. Regardless of how well he's shooting, teams still respect that. Dennis Schroeder, for better or for worse, teams still want him to shoot. Yeah. Most of his shots tonight were pretty open. You'll agree? And he missed like all of them. So my point is that in order for him to be on the court and not have the ball, he's a negative. So he has to do some version of what he did tonight constantly, which means take smart shots, attack the defense if they close that out of control.
I like this game today.
Exactly. I liked it
Yeah,
too. And he and if I recall correctly, he didn't have a ton of assists, right? Like, I mean, which would be a really good thing if he didn't have a ton of assists. Yeah, he had 5 assists. This I can live with.
Yeah.
16 shots, 5 assists is the type of usage I want for Dennis Schroeder going forward. I mean, 16 shots a little bit high, but like whatever. I don't care. He's been your leading shot taker a lot. Do you know why he's the leading shot taker? Because the defense wants him to be your leading shot taker.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if he hit 4 out of 9, I mean, holy shit, right? I mean, and 4 out of 9 would be like kind of in line with his percentages this year. So
yeah,
even if he hits 3 out of 9, I mean, he's not going to hit 1 out of 9 every night, man. And I mean, these shots are open.
The spacing's not great anyway, so it's like you need people to drive in tight quarters, and he can do it.
If he stops taking these shots and Siakam stops taking these shots, I mean, they shot terribly from 3 tonight, those two, and that really tanked your overall efficiency as an offense, and probably is one of the bigger reasons why you didn't blow this team out by 30. However, if they don't take these shots, your spacing will get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah,
every game.
Scotty takes a lot of threes, especially in like the first half.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty taking 5 threes is good. I like the ones that he took. There was nothing forced. There was no step backs. I didn't like all of Gary's threes tonight. There was a couple of forced ones. Like, I didn't love it. But yeah, overall, I have no complaints from Dennis Schroeder tonight. None. Like, I actually have 0 complaints with Dennis. I have 1 complaint with Pascal, 0 complaints with Dennis, maybe 1 complaint of Scotty, 3 complaints with like honestly, I counted the mistakes as I was watching. I watched this game like with laser focus for whatever reason because it was a little bit slower and it was easier to track.
If we're talking complaints, my complaint is, and it's getting it's so weird. Precious insistence on bringing the ball up the court every single time he gets a rebound, regardless of the situation. It's like, yo, you could have just handed to Dennis or Scotty and let them run it. It's like, no, I'm going to dribble it up the court, stop at the top of the key, and then just hand it off to somebody. It was like, yo, we had an advantage, but you just have to, I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah. Any final takeaways, man?
Yes. 5 bench guys played today. Otto was not one of them. Coloco's still out. It looks like Boucher is 100% going to be the odd man out when the roster is healthy, and probably Gradey Dick.
Yeah, they're talking about getting Gradey some G League run.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, sure. Like, fine, right? Like, if he's bought into it, something that I was listening to Derek White talk about with the JJ Redick podcast when he was talking about Greg Popovich was he said, you know, the first year in San Antonio, I spent a lot of time in the G League. And what I liked about it was that when I would come up to the main club, Greg Popovich would talk to me about what I did in the G League. So I still felt like I was invested in. Darko Rakovic is going to be watching all of Grady's like G League tape. He's going to be looking at all his possessions. He's going to be telling him what he can do better. If there's ever a coach who could send you down to the G League and not break your confidence at all, it is Darko Rakovic. So I think that a little bit of G League run would be probably good for him. Hopefully he gets back. You know, right now he looks like he's not really getting. Yeah. He can't seem to get a clean shot. And if you want my honest opinion, that's probably a really good thing. That means the defenses are respecting a 26% 3-point shooter, even though he's shooting 26%, because they know what's going to happen when they leave him open. He's going to fucking kill him. So the very fact that every single time he touches the ball on offense, he has a defender right on him should tell you something about how defenses are guarding this guy. Because every single time Scotty, Pascal, Schroeder, Jakob catch the ball 25 feet away from the basket. I mean, they're guarding up a little bit more on Scotty right now, but man, they're leaving Siakam and Schroeder just wide open. They're just like, I dare you. With Gradey and Gary, that's not happening. With OG, that's not happening. So the more you have those guys on the court, the more they are able to actually punish the defense on a couple of those. Like, it's going to be really good. But I think it's encouraging that he's being guarded.
I think you have to sneak Gradey maybe in as the first guy off the bench, to sneak him in with like 4 starters. Like, that's what you might have to do. Like, you might have to play with 3 or 4 starters.
That might be a really good suggestion. Yeah, I think you're right. But, you know, again, I was talking about this with Malachi Flynn, right? Like, when you talk about like good versus bad, how bad is your bad? How good is your good, right? Like, Grady's bad has been really bad. Like, Jalen McDaniel's bad has been really bad. Like, these guys are like, I don't know if they're going to give you negative 25 box plus minus. They're going to give you like positive 5. That swing and variance is too large for any rotation player to earn consistent rotation minutes. Like, when Torrey Craig comes into the game for the Bulls, like I'm assuming that their coach knows that he's going to be like a steady positive or a mild negative. You can live with this with your role players. You cannot live with negative 20 boxes minus every third night from your like rotation players because it kills you. I can tell you right now, this is not to throw shade on Gradey Dick. Obviously, I'm a very big supporter of his. And this is also not to throw shade on Malachi Flynn early on in the season, not to throw shade on Jalen McDaniels. You don't play those three guys in the games where they killed you, you probably win 2 more games this year.
Yeah.
They have cost you so much. Malachi, less now. Like he's played much better. This was a decent game. Last game was a great game. There have been like overwhelmingly a positive trend with Malachi, but like with Gradey and with McDaniels, oh my God, like the first 10 to 12 games, you don't play those guys and you play Thaddeus Young or Garrett Temple in their place, you probably have 2 more wins.
If Nick Nurse was coaching the first couple games, we would have won. We would have won that Chicago Bulls game, 100%.
Yeah, but this is about winning the season, not winning one game.
No,
so
I know what you mean, but yeah.
Anyway, man. Yeah.
Loved OG's early possessions, mid-range. Like that dude can do more than people realize, man. He's nice. He's nice. That's why I want Malachi starting, because those 3 guys can eat. They can eat. But
I think eventually maybe they do see Malachi as a starter long term. Personally, I'm not so sure.
I just want Jakob and Dennis to get out of the way of the 3 guys that are going to take us places. Those are the 3 guys that are going to take us places. It's those 3. If we're going to do anything this year, it's those 3.
Yeah. I think also like worth noting that, Malachi's just kind of got his confidence going right now, right? But you do realize he's playing a disproportionate number of minutes against bench players.
Yeah.
I mean, he did have some minutes against Tyrese Halliburton last game, but like overall, I think, if you put him out to the Wolves and start and he struggles, like that could really hurt him.
You don't think he can do well with the shots Dennis gets? Because a lot of the shots Dennis got today, he didn't create for himself.
First of all, he will never get the shots that Dennis gets. He won't get those shots because the defense will play him differently.
Okay,
that's the whole thing, right? Like,
does that not bode well better for the other guys that they're closer to him?
No, that's fair. But there's also things that Dennis does that Malachi doesn't do as well. Like he won't be nearly as aggressive or offensively assertive. He'll be a little bit more passive. Like he's getting there. Don't get me wrong. Like he's better,
Rob,
but he's not better. He's not better than Dennis Schroeder right now.
He's not. But if Dennis plays like this, I'm off bench Dennis. I'm done with that. If he plays like this, I'm done with it.
Okay, so let's just hope that the next game he plays like this.
If he plays like this, he can start. I'm good.
I'm of the mindset that like one of the things that I think that I need to correct my stance on is that I kind of thought like Chris Boucher, Otto Porter, Dennis Schroeder, Thaddeus Young. I'm just thinking these guys, Pascal Siakam, these guys are too old to develop. So whenever I thought about development, I always thought of guys under 26. And what I'm realizing now is that Darko doesn't think the way I think. What I'm realizing, due to the conversation I had 2 days ago, thank God for that conversation, is that Darko is actually here to make all of them better players because they're all players on his team and he has been hired to coach all of them. And so making Dennis a smarter, off the ball, secondary playmaker type, player, as opposed to either a greatly inefficient primary initiator or a spark plug type of off ball player.
We saw those driving kicks today. My goodness, those driving kicks. Woo.
Oh God, yes, I know. So what I'm saying is like, he doesn't think that someone who's 30 years old is beyond development. And we will see if that is the case. But I think that's probably true. I mean, here's a worthwhile thought process here. Thaddeus Young has had a better career. Like Thaddeus Young, the player, was much, much better. And I'm saying much better from the age of 30 to 33 than he was from the ages of 25 to 28. DeMar DeRozan as well.
Steve Nash
as well. So there are players who, due to a coaching change or a system change or a particular shot, like they finally figured out how to shoot or something like that, there are players who have peaked later, especially when their game isn't necessarily predicated on athleticism or their athleticism is not declining. So I think that someone like Siakam who picked up the game a little bit late. Dennis Schroeder, whose IQ to me has always been a bit like hit or miss and kind of questionable. Shot selection has been a bit questionable. These two guys might be players who can get marginally better, especially for what you need them to do over the next year under Darko. So if they do that, at worst case, at some point you have better trade pieces because they're having great seasons, right? Dennis Schroeder playing this well right now. Like the money ball or long term, trade asset approach to this is there are probably 3 guys on this team that you're definitely not trading. Okay, that's Scotty, OG, and Gradey. Those are the guys that I think are off the table. In most conversations, those guys are off the table unless someone hands you Chet Holmgren for O.G Anunoby, in which case you'll think about it. But like in most cases, I think those 3 guys are off the table in trades. Okay, so what does that say for everybody else? That means everybody else is potentially on the table. If something comes up at the deadline, if some team wants to parse down because they're a lot worse than they realize, or some team wants to boost up because they think they're a lot worse than they realize and they want to get better, I mean, they're going to be looking around. And they're going to be looking around and they're going to be seeing Pascal Siakam averaging 15 points per game, and they're not going to be as interested because their fan base is not going to be as interested. But if they look around and they see Dennis Schroeder averaging 17 points, 7 assists on solid 3-point shooting, well, suddenly he is a very different trade asset than the one that you signed. Same thing with Pascal Siakam. My only concern has ever been that this management team not get lost and diluted into who this is about, and I don't think they are. I think they're very clear on who this is about. I think Scotty has shown them everything and more that they could have possibly wanted him to show. He's not slumping. He's not struggling. He's shown you what he can do with a higher usage role. Now he's taking a slightly lower usage role. I have no problem with it, honestly. I'm good. I think it's good that you have a coach that really sees the development potential in everybody because people can get better at different ages. I don't think that Pascal Siakam is going to morph into an MVP candidate or, some superstar right now, but he can get better as a player. He can become more efficient. He can become more effective. There are players like this. Again, like Thaddeus Young is a great example. If he can get, if you take Thaddeus Young at 28 versus Thaddeus Young at 31, if you can improve Siakam that much, you have like a Domantas Sabonis plus level player.
It's the same.
It's the same thing with Jakob Poeltl. He came in with this idea that I'm going to develop Jakob Poeltl. Can he make Jakob Poeltl less turnover prone? We'll see. But if he can, if he can make him a slightly more intelligent defender, if he can make him a slightly better free throw shooter, and he can make him less turnover prone and a better passer, you're talking about a completely different player than the one we had last year, right? Which was just like a pick and roll partner for Fred VanVleet. So I think that this focus on development, whereas I have primarily thought of it as, okay, he's come here to develop these 5 guys. He's actually come here to develop 17 guys. And you might see this affect certain guys disproportionately because some guys are younger, some guys are older, but maybe a guy like Javon Freeman Liberty is going to be like the next Norman Powell because of this guy. And once you develop this culture or reinitiate this culture of development, suddenly everyone around the league is going to be talking about going to play for the Toronto Raptors and getting better over the next 2 years. It's something all players really want. They want to get better. And it's why you got guys like Justin Champagny basically opting to come here, preferring to come here. He's not from here. He's not from Toronto. He's not like a local kid. He chose to come here because he knew that the Raptors had a track record of development. And then the same guy who chose to come here posted on Instagram, "Get me the fuck out of here," like a year and a half later. And that should tell you everything you need to know about what development was like under Nick Nurse last year. So I'm just happy to see development back. Anyways, I'm gonna cut this live a little bit short because I am tethering off my girlfriend's phone and I don't want to kill up all her data. But thanks a lot, man, for calling. And I hope more games like this, man.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, peace, man. Have a good night. All righty. We are calling it quits after, that much. I do want to remind you that these 2 videos, Pride and Joy, man, I'm really happy with the work that I did on those 2 videos. It's not really the work I did. It's they're both lives. They're both me rambling. The second one right there, the 1 hour and 20 minute one, that one is a lot of data and a lot of facts. And I think a really good bird's eye view on what this whole thing is about, what this business is about, what this team is about, and all that stuff. So yeah. make sure to like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Thank you to everyone who commented. I'm sorry I wasn't paying too much attention to the comments tonight. And thank you very much, Larry Kane, for the super chat. One of my absolute favorite community members. Not that I'm picking favorites, but just, you know, yeah, really admire him. So, couple quick comments. Oh my God. Thanks a lot, man. No, not yet, but really hoping for something soon. Yeah. Anyways, guys, talk to y'all later, and thanks for tuning in. Good win. See ya. Bye.